probably or possibly a breakthrough in disclosure, which would then possibly lead to frenzy and aliens.
Which, curiously, we have this terrible situation at the moment involving all kinds of media focused on government officials, and we have mere days before a big period of release language. So in my way of thinking, that's, I mean, I didn't bring it up earlier, but the release language associated with everyone running around yanking their hair out, assuming they have any, over aliens showing up, is indeed release language. It's just going to spew out of everybody. So that also fits for this particular time frame, which is really, 2 weeks away? 25th?
Mm-hmm.
Mere 11 days, yeah. And that'll happen. The Space Goat Farts entity we've got that contains it's what we call a bit bucket. And it contains all of our data for the officially unknown, the officially denied, the actual unknown, and so on. And it has been one of the more accurate forecasting sets we've had, especially for the real out there stuff. So, for instance, in early 1997 run that I did, I came up with all kinds of stuff indicating that the sun was going to be going through a, quote, disease episode. And I think that we can all pretty much agree that the sun especially over these past couple of years, but since late 1990s, has certainly been acting up a lot. And by following that particular linguistic trail, we end up with where we're at today, where it may be that there's going to be a government meeting in the press in a live situation or near live situation related to the Japanese situation. And within that context, we may get that general popping up, delivering those kind of descriptors, those kinds of words. That data set, by the way, was also the same data stream, the same entity connection stream in terms of it came from the same source that allowed us to predict months in advance the General McChrystal would get into trouble with his words and resign. So we have a very high degree of confidence in that particular forecast.
Mm-hmm. See, of course, you're suggesting we're about 11 days' time or so?
Well, sometime in the release language period. That's 7 months. So that would be from March 25th through to October 8th of this year. All kinds of weird stuff is going to come out of the woodwork during this period of time to give us all of this release language. Let me back up a bit. I got a lot of heat for suggesting that there was going to be a tipping point in November of this past year, and there indeed was a tipping point, and then I said it would last for 63 days, and it would be filled with incidences of release language. And of course, it was during this period of time that we had the global frenzy with WikiLeaks, which was doing what? Well, it was releasing things, which usually we don't get them that blatant, but indeed it caused a bunch of people to run around like chickens with their heads cut off, releasing stuff all over as they were venting out all of these emotions, or reacting to it if they were the, quote, victim of the release, the WikiLeaks release. We now have a situation that is analogous to those 63 days, only it extends for 7 months. And it starts off with a big jump into a release language. The difference between the previous 63 days following a tipping point and what we face from March 25th onward can be metaphorically described as the difference between diving from the edge of a pool. That's what we did last time. We dove from an edge of a pool and we swam in release language for 63 days. This time we're going to jump from the high dive into the very deep end of the pool and be in that pool for 7 months.
Mm. Now, obviously, your kind of software programming there is picking up, emotional wording.
Shifts. Yes, yeah. Correct.
Okay. So, right off the top of my head here, if it's picking up things about UFOs and disclosures and this, that, and the next thing, could it possibly be, if there is going to be anything like that, it's deliberately put out there?
Sure. Actually, it could, and that's something we've been worried about ever since the beginning.
As an illusion, and that actually what people might be seeing or might be hearing about, that the so-called powers, I know you like to call them the powers that were.
Yes. Them nasty fellows, yes.
The guys,
them wee beasties, yeah.
Well, could it actually be what they're actually talking about is, instead of it being, unidentified flying objects, could actually be AMAs?
I would suggest that it's not an issue of, or that we're thinking about this in a different. We should think about it in a different way. I would suggest that we don't think about it as being exclusionary, but being inclusionary. So within the broader thing of the whole UFOs, certainly we've got the wee beasties out there with their little machinery trying to cause humans to think particular things about that subject. There is no doubt of that. Within our data stream, it's very analogous to being able to sort of look at a newspaper from the future and be able to pick out some of the bigger headlines and bigger words. But, of course, we would have no way of knowing if they were reporting an actual incident or somebody just discussing the potential for an incident if we weren't really able to see all of the details in that newspaper. So we're getting a view through the glass darkly. There is no question about that. And there's multiple layers involved in this as well, because it could be at one level that the government wishes to, they know about us and they wish to alter our results by salting the mind, so to speak, of the internet and putting out specific kinds of language out there. And we've been aware of this trend for a long time, and we know that the government has all kinds of software to mimic personas online and do this kind of thing. And we can actually see their attempts to do that based on our reduction of the language first and then an aggregation into larger sets built around archetypes. We find specific patterns arising that we know are, quote, artificial within the nature of our work. On the other hand, if you get back to the issue of if a fellow in Scotland writes about a UFO and we get a forecast off of that, is it because he's seeing an actual UFO, or is it because the powers that have their minions running around in a flying triangular craft that really is a known entity and not an unknown entity? We couldn't tell the difference in our data. So, but to a certain extent, it probably doesn't make much difference.
Okay, so basically what the data is suggesting then, that there is going to be something, whether it could be AMA or otherwise, there is going to be something.
Correct.
Right.
We're just getting the incident and the emotional response to it, whether it's a hoax, whether it's an effort to socially engineer a specific reaction. We can't tell from this distance.
Yeah. See, I think everybody focuses on 2012 as being the big UFO influx, but if your data is suggesting that this could be anywhere from the next 11 days to October.
No, I'm suggesting that within this period of time, from March 25th through to October 8th, of release language, that the nature of that language would be very accommodating to the kind of situation of that general coming on out and talking about UFOs. And so it could occur in that period of time. I'm not stating that it will. I actually personally think that over this next 7 months or so from March onward, we will see stuff come out that's related to disclosure insofar as how people think about it. But I don't ever think that there's going to be a situation where the powers that be come on out and officially say, okay, people, here's an alien, his name's Ralph, and he can play ping pong really well with these four hands, that kind of thing. I just don't think it'll come out that way. I do think that they're going to have to leak it out in dribs and drabs, because there is, in fact, alien wars is ongoing over us now. Now, within our Space Goats FART, getting back to the report itself, we have a subset in there that we labeled as Space Goat Farts. And this is where you just, you can smell something, you're just not really sure what it is you're smelling. And so you got the data out there and it's running around, you got your spiders out there running around collecting data that hints at fish officially unknown and officially denied and all of this. And we kept getting archetypes for alien wars. Two words coming together, aliens and the concept of contention, war, not necessarily bullets, but some level of basically confrontation. And that meme is really hot and reaches what we call visibility. That is to say, it should have articles written about it by October of this year. So I do suspect that by this year, within this year, we're going to see a huge ramp up of the words that will lead us to have that article out in October openly discussing alien wars. And it won't be discussing it in a theoretical sense the way we've already seen articles about, should we weaponize space? It's not that kind of language.
Right. See, as at the top of the show, Cliff, I find your data analysis and stuff like that, I find it fascinating. But I have difficulty with certain parts of it, and that's no me.
Well, I would hope that you would have difficulty with all of it.
Yeah, well,
I don't want people to accept it. I want people to really get out there and think about it and challenge me and prove me wrong, and then we'll all learn.
See, I could pick out such things from the report as like flooding in the southwest, northwest, the central plains of the USA, fires large scale affecting Australia, large parts of China. Crop failures, all these kind of things, animal deaths, birds, other animals that we've seen, well, particularly the birds and the animals that's been dying, landing on people's streets, and fish washed up on beaches and stuff like that. But
sure, we've actually had that here in my local area.
Well, yes. See, that is very strange, and we did have one particular guest on that was going to be speaking about that, but kind of sidestepped the issue. So maybe in a wee second you can fill us up on what you think that's about. But going back to the floodings and the fires and mudslides and earthquakes and all this kind of stuff, are these not natural phenomena anyway?
Correct, but the reason that we bring them out is because what we're attempting to do is to provide a context in which to place the other weird stuff. Okay, so basically, if we stick to the newspaper being held up, some distance from me, and we're sort of trying to pick out what words we can in the brief little flash that we get of it, we're getting global newspapers, and in order for us to put a context together that says that alien wars will come out in October and reach visibility within what we call the propaganda press in October of 2011, then we needed to basically be able to go and follow the chain of all of the events and all the newspapers that led us to that particular point. Makes sense? So it's a matter of these things are important to a lot of people, and if I can tell you that you live in the Pacific Northwest of the continental United States, and you're going to be facing an earthquake of some serious magnitude within the next month, very likely, and I don't know the exact timing, but I do know that it's going to be so severe it's going to cause long-term, potentially 6 to 8 months, communications disruptions, then that is a meaningful thing for you, even if I can't accurately pick out what month it is. And I would also argue that if I'm even only half right on those and you prepared for that with your extra food and so on, you're not harmed. Mm-hmm. Makes sense?
Yeah, well...
So yes, they're natural. Yes, they're it's kind of like reporting the obvious to a certain extent, but you'll note that when I reported about the animal and bird deaths happening in the year 2011 and in the very early part of that